Hello, friends. Okay. This is going to be interesting because I think it's interesting. So I thought it would be nice to kind of sit down a bit and talk about all the things I've been learning recently. We're going to talk about three things. First of all, note-taking and anchoring knowledge. Second, we're going to talk about philosophy, sense-making, and meaning. And then third, we're going to talk about directing your life. Like, what place does it come from? How do we do this? And how do we do this well? So let's get going. First of all, lately I've been kind of working on my note-taking system. If you don't know Tiago Forte, he built this amazing thing called Building a Second Brain. It's a concept, it's a course. He started a YouTube channel recently, so there's a ton of information for you to learn. And it basically talks about how do you take notes so that you can use it for creative output. And that is something that I've been really focused on lately, especially because I'm making these videos. And so coming up, like generating insights, that's like a core part of this. And one of the key learnings of that, of course, is ingesting information with the intent of output. So that is one of the main reasons I'm doing exactly this, talking about what I'm learning, because it forces me to look over what am I actually learning and to summarize it and to bring everything together. And there've been like a little leap of insights recently in there. One of the core ideas in how I structure my notes, I'm reading from my notes here, by the way, but one of the core ideas is this idea of the evergreen note. It's a concept by Andy, and I cannot pronounce his name, or I've never really tried to. Anyways, evergreen note is this idea that you have a atomic note, a note that is talking about a specific concept, and then you try to link it with as much as possible so that you build this integrated space of knowledge. I really look at it as like a landscape. I came up with this term that I call neuroforming, because just like we have terraforming, where you would create a hospitable place like on Mars, for example, we kind of have a knowledge space in our minds, which is the space of everything we know, and everything has a place and has relations to each other. So if you're learning new things, if you're acquiring knowledge and insight, what you want to do is you really want to form that landscape inside your mind so that the information is easily accessible. And one of the main ways to do that is by restructuring what you're learning. So if a lot of people do this in a different way, call this different things, but really what it comes down to is you take the information and you kind of mold it like Play-Doh so that it fits in between the other parts of your brain. You can really see this as your neurons being discrete. Of course, it's not exactly like this, but your neurons storing specific pieces of information and they're linked to each other. So what you want to do if you have something new, you kind of want to take one part and link it to one side, another part link it to another side. And that way, like, because your brain works by linking and by going from one place to another, you want new things to be very densely linked to other things so that it's really like anchored and structured and becomes a core part of your information landscape. So that is this neuroforming idea. It's really about restructuring information so that it makes sense to you and so that it connects to all the other things that you already know. Because, I think we kind of have to do this because we are past information overload. There's just so much information out there. You can know anything about anything at any point in time. And it's just like, what am I gonna do here? There's so much to learn. And so I think the answer here is this idea of perspective. That is what is really valuable in this day and age. It is the perspective of someone who did take the time to learn and to summarize and to restructure so that they can point out at like, this is good, this is interesting, and this is interesting, and this is how these things relate to each other. Because that becomes a lot more compact and insightful way of having information and being able to use it. So this is why I'm doing this, because I want to build perspectives, I want to generate insights, and I want to neuroform this ideal landscape in my mind. One of the other very tactical things that I do related to that is reviewing recent notes, because you're learning something, it's easy to relate it to other ideas that you already know that are in your head that are related. But sometimes by just seeing a random list or a list of most recent things, which is relatively random because you read about a lot of different things at the same time, that's actually helps you like figure out, oh, this is also related to what I saw here. So that's a very tactical thing that I did there. That reminds me of something that happened in university. I had a class called Science of Philosophy, or the Philosophy of Science, which is one of my favorite classes ever. I absolutely loved it. And when the exam came, I did the exam. I loved the topic. I learned a ton of it. It really formed the way I'm thinking about knowledge, about knowing. And they gave my grade, and I had 6 out of 20. So that was like insanely bad. So I went for feedback to the professor, and he kind of showed me like, oh, this is wrong, this is right. And kind of what the conclusion there was is I really noticed that he was paying specific attention to specific words being used. And so what I had done to learn this is what I just did, to restructure the information so that it fits in with everything that I know. But I don't have much of a philosophy background, so my terminology, my vocabulary is not very philosophical, right? And I used that to explain things because there were just like 5 or 6 questions, explain this, and you have a big piece of paper and you write it down. And so I didn't use lots of the terms that came in the course, which is actually what he wanted, because he wanted to see that I understood everything in there. And so it wasn't very clear if I wasn't really using it. So yeah, okay, fair. I did the exam the second time, and then I had 20 out of 20. So that goes to show that perspective and how you're explaining things is super important. And so that brings us to the second subject, which is this philosophy. And I love these ideas of sense making, which is the process of how do you make sense of things? How do you use information and know what is right, what is wrong? This ties into the whole fake news thing. And this is something that I think is a very big challenge in society right now. We used to have these higher up powers, the newspapers and the news on television, and that they told us what was right. And now we have social media, which sometimes tells us an entirely different story, which is sometimes right and sometimes isn't. And so now we are at this place like, how do we know what is right? So that is this whole idea of sense making. I really invite you to look up into it. Jordan Hall and John Vervaeke are 2 of the modern philosophers that are still alive and making content right now that I'm really interested in. One interesting idea I wanted to share with you is this idea that of how we know things. We usually think of, I know something about this laptop by trying to distance myself and being a observer of it without interfering with the thing, because that would give me a wrong idea of what it is if I interfere with what it is. But what we know from philosophy and what we know from quantum science is that it's really impossible for the observer to be really separate from what we are observing. We're not even talking about all the steps that go in between the laptop and actual me understanding what it is, the eyes and the brain, and it's interpreting. It's not seeing, it's interpreting. Anyways, what if you would flip this idea around? What if you would no longer try to be separate from it in this impossible challenge, but instead know in participation? That this idea is called participatory knowing. And so you really flip it into, I know the thing by being one with the thing. Because in a way, I am one with the laptop, or at least I'm one with my idea of what this laptop is. I think it really helps to have this feeling of feeling connected with the world as a whole and not trying to observe it from a distant place, but rather observe it from being the same as it. This flip gives you a bigger feeling of meaning in life, I feel like, because we make meaning in our life. This is a quote from Joseph Campbell I wrote down. It says, "Life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning and we bring it to life. It's a waste of time to be asking the question if you are the answer." Right? So there's no meaning in a desk or in a computer or in a friend or in a lover. You give meaning to things. And so feeling as if you're one with life, that just changes the game of how you think about meaning, because you're just the same and you're giving it meaning and it's you. To kind of back off a little bit and explain where this comes from is that we see that for a lot of people, their feeling of, I feel that life is meaningful, comes down to feeling cohesion, right? Things make sense to us when they fit in with what we already know. Again, this goes back to this idea that I talked about before, about restructuring information, molding it to what you already know. Things make sense when they fit in with all the rest of your mental landscape, of your knowledge landscape. And that gives meaning to life. You get meaning in life when you feel like everything fits together. Everything is gonna, everything is related to each other. Everything is gonna work out fine. That is what gives you the meaning. Okay, so when you're learning about all these things, if you're in personal growth, personal self-improvement, personal development, whatever, if you're into that, you probably do quite a bit of these exercises of what is my purpose in life? What are my important areas of focus in life? And you think about a lot of these high level things, what is important to me, but then it comes down to actually spending the day and deciding what to do. And it's, I don't know, for some reason, it's so easy to drift away from it, to just go through the motions of the day and do things, and then the big insights that we had about this is really important in my life, it's so easy to forget it, right? So, and then you also have this habits and routines and practices of things that we know that support us. For example, meditating, going to the gym, eating well. These are things that we need to do every day because they support us in being able to do what we find purposeful. And then you have your values and virtues, which is how are you doing it? And how do I do this pursuit of purpose in a way that is good for me, that feels like I'm being a good person while doing it? So there's so many different things that kind of we need to know at the same time and act from to be able to act well. First of all, let me just relax you a little bit, because this is the paradox of self-improvement. If you're looking so much at how can I get better, you tend to, this implies to yourself that you are not good enough as you are right now. So the paradox is that you need to believe those two things at the same time. Yes, I'm already perfect, or at least good enough right now. And yes, I want to improve as a person and change and grow. Yeah, it's just a paradox. I think there's so many things that we just kind of, it helps to believe it even if it doesn't always make sense, right? Anyways, so we were talking about the purpose and the values and the habits, and how do you use that and transition into actually deciding what to do every day. So a friend of mine did a talk recently where he explained he had this whole Notion system. Notion is a note-taking tool. This whole system where he started from the one thing and then descended into this, eventually the goals and the projects and the tasks. That was very interesting. It's very inspiring, and it made me think of life as a sort of multi-dimensional optimization problem. If you're into maths, that might make sense. If you're not into maths, it doesn't. It just kind of, we are at this point and we want to go to that point, right? But you can move in all kinds of directions because you have many different parts of life: your finance, your health, your relationships, your friends, So there's lots of different things that we can move, and each of these things we can move closer or further from where we want to be. So I alluded to this a few times before, but one of the crucial things that will make us do what we want to do is remembering. I call this concept decide and remember. To get where you want in life, you need to first decide, yes, I'm really gonna do this. I'm really gonna try to get this thing. And then you need to remember. You need to set reminders everywhere, because for some reason humans just forget this stuff. And that is why these structures of this your Notion dashboard thing, that's why it helps, because it helps you refocus over and over again. One of the core things that would help you there is your ability to review these things quickly, because we can have like 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 pages of life purpose and vision, but there's no way you're going to look at that every single morning. So in that case, we want to kind of zoom out and just have a few minutes, or maybe just a few seconds if that's all we have, to review and re-anchor and to put this in our mind, like, yes, I'm going to be a nice person today or something, you know. So that is one of the things that if you're building something like that, make sure that you not only have the long explanation, but you have the short explanation so that you can look at it regularly. And so this ability to move from high level to low level really quickly is actually very, very useful, because it helps you really direct where you want to be and go in life. That gave me an idea that I really want to start exploring, and that is this idea of having your notes or a structure of your life in virtual reality. Because humans are so good at spatial organization. You remember so well where exactly the thing is on the table. One of the great things about physical books is that if there's really a part of the book that stayed with you, like, you know about where it's like, oh, it's right here, or just a few pages before or after. You cannot do that with a digital book, right? We as humans, the location of things in space, for some reason, it's very, very easy for us to know these things. This is why we have the method of Loki. For example, if people want to remember the order of a deck of playing cards, then often what they will do is in their head think of a space and then anchor the numbers or the letters of that playing card game. They will anchor it in different locations in their imagined space. But what if you could have all these things in life that you think that are really important for you to remember? What if you could literally give them a place? We can do that in virtual reality. You can kind of make this, you can make your ideal landscape a real thing. You can give things actual locations. So I'm very curious what that would do with this understanding what you're learning and generating insights from all the things that you already know and combining them. Okay, that was it. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed learning about this. I enjoy summarizing this, and I will continue doing this. So make sure that you subscribe, like the video if you did. I hope you did. Let me know any questions you have, any thoughts. If you want to riff on any of these ideas, I would love to hear more about it, because I'm all about learning. And if you want to learn about this or other things, subscribe. There will be more. My overarching goal is being highly optimized to live in the world of tomorrow, to think about what are the skills you need as a human to thrive, specifically in this modern day and age. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you, man. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. That's gonna be long, no? I don't know. 7 hours. That's a time code. I don't know how long this is.